Hey everyone, it's been a few months since my last video I made about Chris Kobach, and in that time I've gone back to school. I'm actually home right now for Thanksgiving break, and I've had a lot of time to think. I've done some research and some reading and studying, and had some conversations with comrades, and I have undergone a bit of a shift on my views towards the issue of revolution. And I'm no longer as reformist as I used to be, and I now think we are going to need some kind of revolution to bring about a socialist system. Now, I should probably clarify what I mean. I don't mean that we need a civil war. I think that's a very bad idea, and I don't think that that's even possible in the US. The conditions just are not right for a civil war. It's not going to happen. I don't think that we need an armed coup. I think that will lead to a dictatorship, and I think that will be very bad. We want to build a more democratic system, not a authoritarian model. Authoritarian models are inherently bad, in my opinion, although anarchists will say I'm advocating an authoritarian model, but that's a side issue altogether. And I'm not advocating for a vanguard party. I think the vanguard party is not an effective organizing model. I think it ignores a lot of the elements that need to be taken into consideration for a revolution to happen. And again, I think that it is a little inherently authoritarian and should be avoided because of that. And it's undemocratic since most vanguard parties operate under the model of democratic centralism, which I may make a video on in the future. What I'm saying is we need a revolution modeled around labor unions, democratic social movements, and civil resistance. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not advocating for a peaceful revolution, and I'm not advocating for a violent one either. I'm advocating for civil resistance when the conditions are right. I still think we need to do reform work and that we need to engage in electoral work. I think those are both very good things that we need to do, and that they can bring about quite a lot of good for the working class and for the greater public. I'm sorry, I'm breathing a little hard here. This is just a bit of I'm just very nervous about making this video, sorry, but I think that we need to keep in mind, though, that these will not actually bring about socialism on their own. We aren't going to be able to just reform away capitalism and bring about a socialist system. If we were able to do that, the Nordic nations, which I would say are the most successful of the reformist line, would be socialist, but they're not. They're social democratic capitalist nations. They're welfare capitalism, not socialism, and I think that they could have the potential maybe for a successful reformist one, but they haven't gone that way because of the pushback that would come from that. I think they are probably the closest to a revolution, honestly, because of the conditions there. What we need to do is we need to engage in reform and electoral work in order to improve the current conditions and enable a revolution to better happen. One of the reasons I don't think a revolution is possible right now in the US is because of the state of the labor movement. The labor movement is very weak in the US, in large part because of the Taft-Hartley Act that was passed in the 1940s, which has decimated the labor movement and created these right-to-work laws. One is trying to be passed in the state of Missouri right now, and my home state, Kansas, is a right-to-work state. We need to work on getting rid of these right-to-work laws and pass pro-union laws that will allow the union movement to grow rapidly and also democratize the unions themselves. That's a key thing that we need to do right now. Perhaps maybe even work towards a constitutional amendment enshrining the right to form a union in the Constitution. I think that would be a very good policy to enact right away. We also need to lift some of the restrictions on the right to protest and on restrictions on civil disobedience and political organizing in general. Those will be good to enable a revolution to happen. And then we need to enact policies which will reduce the power of the capitalists and empower the working class. So not just the labor unions, but we will need policies like the welfare state and things like that in order to reduce the dependence on capitalists so that workers will be more inspired to engage in political work and will have more power against the capitalists that will enable a revolution to happen. Again, I said I'm very nervous about this video. I'm trying to be very candid about this one. It's just this was a long decision to come to, really. And I'm going off a partial script here, but I want to be frank with you. This was a big moment for me when I came to this conclusion, and it took a long time. I don't think that we need. I think armed revolutions are a bad idea, even though we could that would be more practical in the US than, say, in the Nordic nations because of our gun laws. I think that that's a bad idea. ContraPoints did make an interesting video on violence, but as I'm a death penalty abolitionist, I don't want to kill people, and I don't want to have to kill for my ideas. And I think that history has shown that it can be avoided. We've seen historical examples of where not peaceful, but non-violent, more or less non-violent revolutions toppled regimes and brought about serious democratic changes. The People Power Revolution in the Philippines is the first example that I thought of, and then more recently, the Tunisian Revolution, which is, has had some problems, but it was the most successful of the Arab Spring revolutions. It did bring about a democratic state in North Africa for the first time ever. And then also, and I know some of those who are farther to the left than me will be angry that I'm bringing this up, but the revolutions of 1989 also show that you can do this without the use of arms. The peaceful revolution in Czechoslovakia, the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia, and the peaceful revolution in East Germany, both were done through civil resistance, political organizing, strikes, and methods of that nature, not through arms, like in Romania, which was also a revolution in 1989. And they worked. They brought down these regimes, and I think that we could do this with the capitalist system, and we could bring down the current political system as well if we need to. Well, I don't know how a revolution will come about. I don't think that we need to be, that we need to try and make it happen, so to speak, right now. The conditions just aren't right. We need to do it at a time when the workers are better organized, when we have stronger political organization, maybe even political power, and then we need to use what we have then to strike, to take down capitalism at its core. And even if we don't get rid of capitalism right away through the revolution, we can at least build a framework that will eventually allow us to transition into capitalism. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of this, and the best thing that we can do right now, join a union, join a socialist group. Like I'm in DSA, you can join DSA, Socialist Alternative, Solidarity, whichever socialist group, if you're in the US, you want to. Just get organized, get more people involved in that, spread the message, and get more involved in politics and activism in your area. That's how we'll bring about a revolution in the long term. I don't think that we will have a revolution in the next decade. I'm pretty sure we won't, unless things get a lot worse. But if we look at history, the revolutions that came about non-violently were preceded by some reforms. Like in Egypt, there were slight democratic reforms. And Egypt's not the best example, I realize, but Hosni Mubarak did loosen some of the restrictions on political parties and allowed them to run in elections, even if he used methods to suppress them, even when they were legal. Same in Tunisia, they legalized more political parties and allowed more people to run in elections, even, again, like if they suppressed those candidates, the dictators suppressed those candidates, they did have reforms. And also in these Eastern European nations, before their revolutions, they also had reforms that preceded that. So we need the reforms still. But I think we do need to keep in mind that eventually a revolution is going to have to come, and I think it will come. I think that we are going to need another revolution in this country, and it could be through mass mobilizations in the streets. It could be, it could, hypothetically speaking, be through the ballot box, although I doubt this will happen. Electing a socialist government historically just hasn't worked. But we do need to vote out all of our current officials. That is going to be a key step, and stop the really bad ones from getting elected, and then elect socialists into those offices, because they'll be able to enact the reforms we need. So this is just my thoughts on revolutions. I know it seemed like I was going back and forth between scripted and non-scripted, and I was very frank and took a lot of pauses there. This was a complicated issue for me to come to. It took me a while to come to this conclusion. I thought we could just bring about socialism through reforms. I decided I was wrong. I realized that and I'm a history major and a political science double major, so I studied these things, and I enjoy studying them. I've been obsessed with history since I was very little, so I like reading about history, and reading about these past revolutions and past attempts at reformist methods, I think It shows that you can get a lot more done with a revolution, even a nonviolent one, than you can with reforms. Although reforms can still be good. We've done a lot with reforms, and we need to do more, but they're not going to be the be-all and end-all. We are going to need to overthrow the system itself. I don't know what the revolution will look like. I'm not a soothsayer. I'm not going to see the future. I'm not going to try and predict that. I'm not going to predict when it will come. I can say I don't think it's going to come in the next 10 years, definitely not in the next 5 years. We haven't had the reforms we need yet, and we don't have the labor infrastructure. We don't have the political infrastructure. The air conditioning system's right behind me, so if you hear that, that just came on. We need to organize. That's how we're going to build socialism. Organization, right now. We cannot just build more co-ops, although I would like more co-ops, and we can't just, expect that to work. We can't just go, the utopian socialist model didn't work. The vanguard model led to authoritarianism. We need a truly democratic revolution in this country and in all the countries around the world in order to bring about a socialist system. That's my take on this. Take of it what you will. I know there will be a lot of people that disagree with me. I know a lot of anarchists and more radical socialists subscribe to my channel as well, so I'm sure you'd like to share your thoughts. I have not, sadly, for you at least, for many of you, I've not entirely rejected my belief in market socialism, although I do think that we need some elements of planning for serious things like energy production, for example, and we do need to nationalize a lot of industries. I really think the first thing we should probably nationalize right now is ISPs, internet service providers. Given the modern economy that we live in, we really need to nationalize those. But I don't think that there's an adequate replacement for the market system. I think eventually we'll find one, and eventually we'll be able to move away from the market, but not quite. But first we need to move away from this hardcore capitalism that we have, and we need to enact reforms to enable a revolution to happen. That's what we need. We need a democratic revolution in this country, and that will come through labor unions, social movements, and civil resistance. That's my belief. I would rather not burn things or any of that, but revolutions can be a little messy at times, and you won't get everything you want with a revolution. There's multiple ways of looking at this, but this is just my take here. This just took me a long time to think about and really consider. I wanted to make this announcement. I tried to keep it secret. I only told a handful of people recently about this, and yeah, it's just one of my more, an issue that I had to think a lot more about. But in the meantime, there's a lot of electoral work that needs to be done. Kobach is still running for governor of my home state, and he must be stopped. He and Donald Trump Jr. are actually hosting an event this coming Tuesday. If you are in the area, please go there. I can't be there, sadly, although I really want to because of school. But if you can be there, go protest him. If you had an election this cycle and you didn't vote, what the hell is wrong with you? You need to do that next time. If you are a worker that is on a site where there's other people trying to form a union or already in a union, why haven't you joined? That's how we'll build a revolution in this country, through those methods, building up, enabling it to happen, and then it will happen once we can do it successfully. Once it's possible, then we'll do it. But it's not possible right now. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the avenues to work through, or adequately at least. So get out there, get active, solidarity.